going to talk to you about, my story. And obviously, as an athlete, you see a gym bag up here. You see a gym bag, and you obviously know if you have a gym bag, you got to have the right things in your gym bag to be able to perform well. You need the shoes, you need the towels, you need water, you need the snacks, you need all those things. But as a father, as a man who's had his own struggles emotionally, I'm going to talk to you guys about the emotional baggage and how we carry around all these fears and anxieties and stresses and all these things which prevent us from being not a father. I'm going to challenge you to be a great dad. And there's a big difference between the two. And people ask me, they say, how did you make it? I'm from housing projects. I grew up in a very difficult and dysfunctional environment. People say, well, how did you make it? There were three things that I focused on that I had in my gym bag. Number one, I had the Word of God. They all start with the letter B. I had the Bible. I'm 6'9", I'm a big man, but I always put my faith and trust in the big man, my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. The second one was books. Most people know Lawrence Funderburk as a basketball player, but I cared way more about academics than I ever did about athletics. Always. And I challenge you as a father, be connected to your kids when it comes to academics. And what I challenge you to do is you have to be on that growth path of learning as well. You have to learn as well. You have to practice what you preach. They're not going to listen to what you say. They're going to watch everything you do. And then obviously most people know me as a basketball player. Those were the three things that I used. I'm going to talk to you about different emotions that I had. And one I had was fear. I'm going to talk about fear. For 18 years, I grew up in the roughest, the toughest, the baddest, the meanest, the most dangerous housing project in Central Ohio. It's called the Sullivan Gardens Housing Project. A lot of fears when you grow up in an environment like that. Actually, there were 10 people that I grew up with who were either murdered, banned, or committed suicide. Checked out. It's not a video game. Once you check over to the other side, you can't come back. That's it. So you grow up with all these different fears when you grow up in this particular environment. And one of the things I have in my pocket, I always carry this with me. This is a food stamp. I grew up for 18 years dependent totally and completely on the government. I'm not against welfare, but it's something wrong when the most important man in your life is the mailman because he was the one that delivered your welfare check to you. There's something wrong with that picture. And I never wanted anyone to see me carry food stamps around because I never wanted anyone to make a judgment about me because of my poverty condition. And there were two other companion emotions. We had anger, we had sadness. Always very common in generational poverty. I remember there were people who used to treat me like I was the scum of the earth because I was poor, because of the way I dressed and where I lived, and I hated that. And I remember being recruited by Bobby Knight and Dean Smith and all these great colleges. Not one coach ever came and visited with me in my neighborhood because I was so embarrassed to let them see where I lived. And it humiliated me. You see drug dealers, and you see gangbangers, you see pimps, you see prostitutes. Those were people that were normal to me. And the most tragic thing is you have people who they just had no ambition for life. They just wanted to exist and take up oxygen. And I said there's got to be a better way than what my environment says I can have. There's three, I don't know how many of you grew up in a house full of women, but I had no male influence whatsoever in my household. 3 older sisters, single parent mom, no male influence. So what do? Obviously, you react emotionally to so much. Moms are moms, but they can't be dads. And this 3 right here, all right, this 3 is very, very traumatic to me when I think about anger, when I think about sadness. And I remember my mom, she would tell me, she would say, son, your father, he's coming to see you. And this was a time, and many of you grew up like me, where you didn't stay inside and play. You didn't stay inside the house. You were always outside. You never stayed inside, except to do 1 of 3 things: to eat, to sleep, or to use the restroom. That's it. You were always outside. And she would say, son, your father's coming to see you. And I gave up my playing time with my friends, and I wait around, and I would look out the window, and I would look out the window until it got dark. And he never showed up. He never showed up. He never kept his word. He crushed me. He crushed me. And when you see these kids who grow up in this environment, I'm not making excuses, but they have so much pain because they have people who say they're going to be there and they never show up. And there's one thing I tell you as a father, keep your word. Keep your word. And I remember the three times that I can remember when he would come and visit me. He would take me, my father, he'd take me to the corner store. He was an alcoholic. Every time I saw him, he was drunk. Every time. So I'm riding in the car with an inebriated man. He'd take me to the corner store to get some candy. And stunned silence. What does a son say to a father that he doesn't know? What does a father say to a son that he doesn't want? We go in the store. And I'm happy, I'm excited to get some candy, and I sprint to the candy aisle. I get all my candy, lemon heads, now laters, and I beat him to the counter. He staggers to the adult beverage cooler aisle, and he gets another 40 ounce. And I'm waiting for him to come back, and I'm sitting there. And don't you know that almost all of my candy had to go back on the aisle to pay for his 40 ounce of malt liquor was Old English. I hate the smell of liquor, hate it. I remember the times when he didn't show up to watch me play sports. He never took an active interest in my life. And I remember I was 16 years of age. 16. And I remember when he died at the age of 40. How ironic. 16 years to the day. I was 16. 16 years later, it was 1987, spring of 1987. 16 years later, I had my first child. And that's when I learned to forgive my father. And she had a surgery today for a torn ACL. She was playing soccer, tore her ACL on the turf. And don't you know, when she came out of her sleep from the anesthesia, my wife is standing right beside her, and I'm to my wife's right. And you know what she said? She said, "Daddy, is it over?" And then she reaches for my hand, and she says, "Daddy, are you here?" And I don't know about you, but to be called a daddy and not a father is the greatest feeling in the world. No amount of money, that's right, no amount of money. No amount of money. Multi-million-dollar contract playing in the NBA, nothing, it means nothing. But to be called a daddy, that means everything. And I'm going to talk to you about daddy issues. And when you have daddy issues, deep-rooted daddy issues, one of three things I think is going to happen. I've worked with thousands of kids across the socioeconomic spectrum, and one of the things I learned is there's one of three outcomes. Number one, right, you're going to hurt others. You're going to go through this path of destruction, and you're going to want to take it out on other people because your pain is so intense. You got to take it out on somebody. Cyberbullying. You're going to say some verbal abuse, physical abuse, financial abuse, emotional abuse. There's going to be something that you do to hurt someone, to deal with your pain. You're going to hurt yourself. How do you do that? We see these kids, drug abuse is rampant. Inner city communities, but it's very much rampant in suburban communities. Why? Because they have the money. They can buy the drugs because daddy is not protecting his sport. So kids are going to gravitate to the drugs. And then you see these kids that are self-mutilating. They're doing things to their body. It's amazing. Not only that, they're getting inked up. Why? Because there's not been a dad to give them a proper brand. And what happens, you have brand disidentification because you don't have someone who brands you properly. So what do? You want to go and establish your own brand by marking yourself up or doing things to your body or destroying your body or sleeping with this person, sleeping with that person because you have so much pain. You have deep-rooted daddy issues, and probably some of you in here, you're going to go on this campaign to seek validation in the eyes of others. That's what you're going to do. You're going to seek validation. It's going to be an asset, it's going to be a car, it's going to be some clothes, it's going to be some shoes, it's going to be a job title, it's going to be some type of career. You're going to want to try to be a boss because you never had someone to properly identify you and brand you. And you're going to go on this campaign to seek validation. And what we've done with social media, a good friend of mine, Eric Seabrook, he says, Lawrence, we may have created a permanent class of approval addicts, always looking for some type of validation, to be loved, to be supported. That's what they do. And if you don't give them the attention that they deserve and that they need, they're going to find it somewhere else. That's why in our community, inner city community, drug dealers and gangbangers make up for the lack that the fathers don't provide. That's what happens. I lived it. I've lived it. I see it everywhere I go, all around the country. The third one, what you're going to do is very destructive. You just check out on love. You check out on life. You just totally give up. That's it. I don't care. I don't want nothing out of life. I don't care about nothing. And I see so many kids who just don't care. They don't care about nothing because they're so hurt. They say, I'm never going to be hurt again, so I'm never going to put myself in a situation where I have to deal with it. I see it all the time. I go to prisons and I see guys, broken guys, murderers, rapists, and I'm talking to them just like I'm talking to you. Same, it doesn't matter. I'm not worried about anything. Because when you have personal brokenness, it's amazing what you do to try to fix the problem. Here are 4 types of fathers. I want you to think about which one describes you. When you think of physically, okay, and emotionally, okay, the first one you have are fathers who are present in the home. And then they're also present emotionally. That's the best. They're there, they're invested. They're making sure that their fathers in the home, investing in their kids, and they're making sure they give them their undivided attention. Then you have the second one where you have someone who's absent presently. Maybe it could be from a divorce, or maybe they don't have a relationship with the mother, but they're present emotionally. And they're saying, I'm vested in wanting to be a great dad no matter what. It doesn't matter. I'm going to be here for my kids no matter what's going on with me and the mother. I'm going to be there. And then you have the third one, which I think is one of the most dangerous, where you have a father who's present in the home, but he is absent emotionally. He's absent emotionally. He's absent. He's there. He's not invested in the kid's well-being. And that's the most dangerous thing, because a kid just says, listen, Daddy, will you just look at me? Will you just give me your undivided attention? And I hear so many guys, maybe it's the fact that they grew up in an era back in the day, their parents grew up in an era where dad was always constructive criticism. Some of you probably can relate to this. And you're always trying to win the approval of your dad. And he never, you got constructive criticism when the car ride home from sporting events, and he never affirms you emotionally. So you go through life and you want to validate yourself to make up for something that your father didn't give you. And I have people who tell me all the time, they said, Lawrence, they tell me when I go speak, they said, that describes me. I always try to win the approval of my father. The key word there is win, because they're trying to compete to try to get their father's attention. And then the last one is how I grew up, is where you have absent fathers, and they're absent emotionally. Absent emotionally. My community, African community, inner city, 70–80% of the kids, of children, grow up out of wedlock. They don't even have a father present in the home. And a lot of these kids have no idea who their father is. Now, you have to think about this. My challenge to you is this. You have to be the gatekeeper in your home. My wife, she's a mother. She can't play my role. She can't be me. I can't be her. And when the strong man is bound up, we know the enemy will come in, and he will sneak in, and he will try to do one of 3 things or all things. He will try to steal, kill, or destroy. That's what the enemy does, because there's no strong man to protect his home. You have to be the strong man. You got to be the strong man. You have to be the strong man. We have all these problems with kids, but what we need to do is we have to look under the hood. We have to go to the brain, because our son has some challenges with the brain, and he was headed for an autism spectrum disorder. We said, no way, not my son. And I remember giving my son a basketball lesson, and he couldn't get it. I was trying to teach him how to dribble and do so many things, because every father wants their kid, especially a boy, to follow in his footsteps. And I remember he says, I can't get it. He slams the basketball down and he says, I hate basketball. And that crushed me. And I said, I've got to go through on some campaign to save our kid, to save our son without giving him any drugs. No drugs. So we changed up his diet, we exercised his brain, and all of his problems, you see it with kids who are on autism spectrum, all of those problems went away. Did it take a lot? Yeah, it took a lot. But we knew the destiny that God had for our son was going to be fulfilled. We saw the vision of where he was going to be, not where he currently was. You got to see the vision of your kids. No matter what's going on with them, you got to be able to see the vision in the future of who they can become. And I think about the father and son dynamic from a spiritual perspective. And I think when before Jesus was going into his ministry, his father, when he came out of the water from being baptized, he heard his father saying, this is my beloved son, in whom I am well pleased. You talking about a momentum booster to get him going in the right direction? And I think about as a father, when you're there and your kids learn for the first time how to ride a bicycle without training wheels. You take them off. You say, nope, you can't hold on to me. Nope, nope, you can't do that. And what do? You give them a what? A push. What do they got to do? They got to pedal. That's the momentum that you have to provide as a father. That is your responsibility, to give them that momentum push, to give them that boost that they need to be successful. I wrote this book really about the brain and getting people to think different, particularly financially. I get people to think different. And there's an area of the brain called the parietal lobe right here. It's kind of that athletic part of your brain. But it's also kind of a mystical area of the brain. And what does this control? You have, number one, you have perception in terms of what we perceive. You sitting down right now is your parietal lobe. You feeling your body, sitting down in a chair, being located right here, that is your parietal lobe. It's what you feel. It's your brain's GPS system. But it also is responsible for sensation, what you taste, what you touch, temperature and pain. That's all regulated or overseen by your parietal lobe. Here's the kicker. Here's the big one. You got to get this. Affirmation. Affirmation is how someone is emotionally supported. Affirmation. That's very important as a father. The second one you got to have is validation. How someone is relationally accepted. This is my son. This is my daughter. We have a connection that's unbreakable. And another one is identification. We have all of these challenges with kids. I don't even know who I am. These kids, they're searching for an identity. Identity crisis is a huge problem. Identification is how someone is personally labeled. The next one is orientation. Orientation is where you are situationally positioned, where you're going. And then another one is appreciation. How you are internally or externally valued. And if you don't give your kids that, guess what they're going to do? They're going to try to find it somewhere. They're going to get it. They're going to find it. Look at social media. It's amazing what these kids are doing just to get attention. They're trying to get somebody to follow. So I have 3 tips for you. The first one that you have to do in terms of being a great father, you have to reach them emotionally. I heard the principal say you got to make a connection. You got to make a heart-to-heart connection that's authentic, that's genuine. It's not a facade, it's not fake, it's real. You have to make a real connection, and it has to be authentic. It can't be made up. Number 2, you have to inspire them biochemically. When you think about neurotransmitters and you think about hormones, and I know that sounds deep, but we've all heard of serotonin. Serotonin is that feel good, that make you feel good. And don't you know that 90% of serotonin is produced in your gut? So if this brain, your second brain is not working properly, this first brain is not going to work properly. So you got to make your kids feel good, but it's got to be warranted. You got to balance out the criticism, constructive criticism with the praise. We went from all constructive criticism back in the day. You remember the time when there was never that, tough it up, suck it up, be a man. Now, today, kids, everybody gets a trophy. For what? For what? You get a trophy because you deserve it. We grew up in a time, right? You had what? First, second, third place. That was it. There was no 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 10th place. But it's all about making people feel good. You can't hurt anybody's feelings. Sometimes you have to be honest and you have to tell the truth. When it comes to dopamine, people say a lot of bad things about dopamine, and it is, and that's your reward center, right? You got to give them an incentive to want to be successful. Don't just give them things just to be giving them. You got to give them a reward that is deserving. The next one, there's a hormone called GABA. When we think about GABA, that is kind of like your peace and to feel calm and to feel protected. And I have seen so many kids who have an unusual fear. Unusual fear. Next one, we come to endorphins. How many times, I remember there's so many athletes, I won't say their name, but I remember so many athletes who say, I always had to look in the stands to see my father because he always gave me a boost. How many of you grew up with that, where you always looked in the stands for your father to be there? Put your hands up. Yeah, that's endorphins. Come on, son, you can do it. Come on, this is my daughter, you can do it. And here's a big one. I gotta focus on this, especially what's going on in this world when it comes to drugs. All right, we have OxyContin versus oxytocin. OxyContin. My wife is from Chillicothe, Ohio. I don't know how many of you have been in Chillicothe, but that's like going back in time when you go down there. My goodness, where am I? But Southern Ohio, in a lot of these places, are decimated with what? Big drug problems. You're either going to run from something or you're going to run to something to deal with your pain. One or the other, you're going to do that. I played in the NBA, I saw guys had all the money, but they had a lot of addictions as well. Money doesn't satisfy when you have a deep-rooted problem inside of you. And you know what, when it comes to OxyContin and talks about different drugs, here's this hormone here, it's called oxytocin. It's a bonding thing. We mostly think about it when a mother bonds with her child. That's kind of like an oxytocin, but men and fathers, we can be dads, we can be oxytocin magnets as well. And you know how we do that? It's validation. Validation is filtered through the eyes. It's filtered through the eyes, but it's solidified in the heart. Oxytocin, bonding. And don't you know, when my son is working out right now and my wife is sitting right next to me, he does a move and he makes a move and he does things. Who do you think he looks to for validation? He looks to me. He looks to me. My wife has a very important role. But he's trying to get that bond, that oxytocin with his eyes to make sure that I'm paying attention. You know what he says to me? Daddy, you're not even paying attention. How many of you have heard that your kids saying that? You know what I'm talking about. You got to give them your undivided attention. You got to be involved. To be a father is work. You can work and you can provide for them and you can give them all these gifts and all this stuff. But it's not going to make up for the deficits that they have inside. It's not going to work. I'm telling you right now, it doesn't work that way. There's one thing that I talk about, it's called values. And values are your guiding principles. You got to have some principles that you stand by, guiding principles to shape your daily decisions, actions, and activities. Three of my principles that we have, they're non-negotiable. Number one is faith in my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. That's first. That's my anchor. That's what I do. That's first. That's non-negotiable. Number two is family, my wife. I've been married 20 years. We celebrated our 20-year anniversary, and we're in a covenant, not a contract. We don't have an expiration date on our marriage. And number three is a big one, is food. You got to eat good food. You got to give your kids real food. I know. When you don't have a lot of money, if you're stressed on your finances, I get it. But you got to make sacrifices other places so that your kids can think properly. Now I'm going to end with this. Your homeboy, Mr. Fundy, I'm after one thing: legacy. When I get in front of anybody, doesn't matter who can Ray Way, how I grew up in the hood, or Mary and John Thomas in the middle class, or the Hofsteins in mega affluence, it doesn't matter. I'm comfortable being around anybody. Why? Because I'm after legacy. And what is your legacy? When I think about legacy, it comes to this. It comes to vision. And vision is the legacy you leave behind for others to follow. Not just your work ethic, you got to leave them a really big legacy. It's got to be holistic. It has to be all-inclusive. And it's got to include so many things that you probably don't even have in your gym bag right now. You need to develop it. And I remember when my son, we go to some tropical place and we're walking on the beach. We're walking, me and my wife, we're side to side, and my kids are behind me. And my son, he's trying to put his foot, even with my long step, he's trying to jump and put his foot into my print. And you know what he said to me, and he says this to me all the time. He says, Daddy, I want to be just like you when I grow up. We're going to leave, gentlemen, we're going to leave a legacy. One way or the other. It's either going to be good or it's going to be bad. But we're going to leave some type of legacy. We're going to close this out. I want everybody to put your hands up. You're going to repeat after me. I have the hand of greatness. Success is always within my reach to be a great dad. It's the best job I've ever had, being a dad. I played against Michael Jordan, Shaquille O'Neal. I played against all these great players. Nothing can compare to being a dad. So I want to thank you, and God bless each and every one.